Today, our guest is Mr. Mason Weaver, an author, speaker, and the author of an interesting book called Diamond in the Rough. Mason, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, one of the weirdest or most interesting stories I know about you is a racist attack you suffered where you were crushed under some steel. You got to help me with this story.
I was in the Navy, went to Vietnam, did get a scratch on me, understood who my enemy was, but I didn't know who my competitor was. And on my ship, I had a competitor who hated me because of the color of my skin. And one day, I ordered my competitor to take control over 2,800 pounds of steel because I was moving steel out of the hallways. And I watched him push and shove 2,800 pounds on me because he was a racist and trying to kill me. I saw a look on his face, the look of anger and hatred, and that look fueled my own personal racial hatred for years because in one instant, he ruined my life, my career, my health. He took away my ability to earn a living, and I hated everybody white for that until I went to Berkeley trying to regain some kind of control of my life, trying to use my brain instead of my back. I ran with other black militants. I took Swahili, I ran with Black Panthers, and I hated white America because of what this one white guy did to me and what America stood for, until I had to learn not just what hatred would do for you, but also what forgiveness would do for you. So now I'm looking at the racial conditions in America right now, and I'm seeing all this call for justice and injustice and demonstrations and marches and protesting. Who's done me wrong with Dog, the bounty hunter, and Don Imus and all this. And I'm saying to America, instead of looking at who done you wrong, look to forgive. Because I forgave that white guy. I forgave him before he forgave me, before he apologized, before he accepted his responsibility for himself. And when I forgave him, I was now able to communicate with America and earn a living and work in a free country. So forgiveness was actually a bigger burden off me than the steel plate. We must learn how to go through life forgiving each other and moving on. I'm a grown man, so why would I let somebody else's hatred for me cause me to be so ambivalent, so angry, so frustrated I cannot compete in America?
Well, what do you think about the status today of race relations in America? Vis-a-vis, let's say, 1965, when the modern civil rights movement began. Where are we from your perspective?
Well, we have two perspectives now. In 1965, my generation went to battle, white and black, to change the civil rights in America, the legal rights. We had legal sanctions against black folks, separate schools and separate lunchrooms and separate facilities. We went and changed that, and we fought and marched and demonstrated to change the legal definition of a man in America. Once we won that freedom in the 70s, black America took advantage of that. I went to college. Other folks went into business. We owned business, and we started our own companies. We started participating. The civil rights movement was never about making white people like black people. It wasn't about managing racism. It wasn't about managing your life and my life. It was about freedom. So if I'm free, I don't care if you burn a Confederate flag anymore. If I'm free, I don't care if you like me anymore. If you call me an N-word, that's just personal between you and I. I don't want a playground monitor to make sure you and I play fair. I also do not want a level playing field unless I'm the one doing the leveling. Because I don't trust you to do the leveling. So the civil rights movement has been won. Like World War I, World War II, when you win the battle, the warriors go back and participate in society. It is time now for those old civil rights leaders, the Kings, the Jacksons and the Sharptons, and it's time for them to say the war is over and leave the army and go back to civilian life. I'm free now. Today you have, in Black America, almost every economic category we've expanded in since the 70s. Home ownerships, employment, income level, almost everyone, high school graduation rates is equal to white America. We have now produced what the dream of King had, where every man is judged by the content of their character.
But what about those who would say it's like starting a race and the non-African American has had 400-year head start, and he's halfway toward the finish line, and now you're saying, okay, you're equal, go race.
Well, I would tell them to stop whining. There is no race, there's no finish line. and there is no starting point. The fact of the matter is that you and I were born at a certain year, a certain part of time. We're able to go to school at a certain part of time, able to learn. Now, whether someone likes me or not, or going to hire me or not, you always have that problem. Italians hire Italians, Jews hire Jews. That's not the point. The point is what solves the problem. The problem is not for one race to still continue to look at themselves as a debtor class, and other ways to continue to look at themselves as a creditor class. You cannot make me equal by taking from you. So if I can't compete with you for this job, I should lose the ability to have this job. You should not have a set-aside program or a means test to allow me to compete against you. That's saying, in essence, I'm inferior to you. If you got to set aside 10% for me, you're saying that I really can't compete with you, but you're a nice white guy, and you're going to just put aside something so I can compete. I think I can't compete against you, and I'm going to take what you have by competition. So the idea that we got to look at us as a race, the idea that America needs to be leveled, that means you have to have somebody doing the management. And I don't trust anyone to manage my racial relationships.
Because that person acquires power over you?
Absolutely. The only way you're going to help me is to control me. If I fall down the floor right now, I can either get up by myself, a lot less strengthful, or you can stand and bend your back and help pull me up. If I let you pull me up, I got to release my power and let you pull me up. If I'm down, step aside. I can get up. When I was in college, I heard this statement. I know everyone has heard it before. If I give a man a fish, he'll eat for a day. If I teach a man to fish, he will eat for a lifetime. I reject that. If I accept that from you, I'm accepting the notion that you have all the fish and all the knowledge. And I can't eat unless you do something. I resent that. I don't think it's true. I have a better saying called Masonism. Let's just open the gate onto the lake, and I would need nothing else to feed myself. I'm a grown man, and I wish America would start treating me like a grown man, not like some adolescent kid who needs to be counseled by daddy.
Now, the black conservative movement in America, frankly, can fit in a phone booth. I mean, there just are not very many leaders. There's Clarence Thomas, there's Tom Sowell, there's Walter Williams, Armstrong Williams, a few others. First of all, why is that? And second of all, what is the historical connection? How far back does this strain of black conservatism go in American history?
Interesting you say that. The reason you think it'll fit in a phone booth is that the press only reports on a few.
Well, I'm thinking about voting patterns, for instance.
Well, actually, if you look at the voting patterns of black America, only 50% don't even vote. Sometimes 60% don't vote.
But I think about 8 to 10% vote
liberal,
Republican.
But they think conservatively. Mm-hmm. Answer on surveys, think conservatively. Now, black leadership has changed. Right now we have black misleadership. So we have victimization of black America. So we all feel like victims now. We go to inner city schools controlled by one political party, and they produce gang members instead of scholars. That's the problem. So what we have is a situation where America is on purpose developing an underprivileged class of people, capable but not motivated. So the black conservative movement is challenging the concept, but the reason you don't have a black conservative organization is that by the very nature of conservatism, we're independent. So I'm not going to go join your group. I'm too busy earning my living, take care of my kids, take care of my family, my 401k program. So we, by definition, will not be seen, but will be felt, because the black community now is solid middle class. Only 24% are in poverty now. 80% of graduates, high school graduates, 45% only on home. We have 401k programs, retirement programs. Now we're in the mainstream with our capital, not just our votes. So that's beginning to change the concept of black America. Now we're actually investors, and now we're actually consumers. And so the political and social economic trends in America has to look at us now as if we're consumers. That would change the concept of leadership. And now Don Imus has to go to Al Sharpton for apology and atonement. Pretty soon you have to go to my black bank.
Now you talked about black folk being conservative. Actually, I think they are the most conservative of any social group on issues of gay rights, abortion, cultural, social issues, and yet they vote primarily 92% for Democrats. Yes. What explains that dichotomy in the voting versus the beliefs of the black community?
Tribalism. You never criticize the tribal chief. So the tribal chief can be against what you want to be against.
Who is the tribal chief?
Well, people that we look to for leadership. Our black pastors, our social leaders, politicians, people that we are told to look to, they're going to fight for you. See, once a group of people believe that there is a social, economic problem, that has to be fixed by group leadership that looks at that leader to form an opinion for themselves. Even though they have a different opinion themselves privately, they will allow the leader, the group, to fight for them. If you ask black people their personal opinions about everything, including the word African American, most black folks don't call themselves that. You folks do, because Jackson and Farrakhan give you a case if you don't. Most black folks aren't offended by the Confederate flag. Most black people don't care if you have a situation where someone else doesn't like you. But the leadership gets money and power by screaming and hollering racism. And the press give them airtime. Most black folks, just hardworking people, want to retire and are not involved in that. We must start doing, though, to change this, it has to be internal. We must start voting overwhelmingly for our own personal self-interest.
Okay, hold that thought. We'll be back in just a moment with our special guest, Mason Weaver. Stay tuned. Mason Weaver, who is the author of Diamond in the Rough. Mason, we're picking up the conversation again on the issue of race. Can you go historically? What's the historical strain that predates, let's say, Clarence Thomas and the confirmation hearings back in the 1800s? Where does black conservatism come from?
Well, it came out of slavery. If you look at the slave condition, the fight for freedom, Frederick Douglass and Harriet Tubman and the Underground Railroad, it took a concept. Don't forget, in the 1800s, you had master controlling all the social input on that plantation. Everything the slaves thought came from master's interpretation. So you had master telling them what freedom was. Freedom meant getting the best job on the plantation. Freedom meant pleasing master. And then you had the Northerners being told by that same master, those slaves enjoy being slaves, they're singing, they're dancing, they got minimum wages, they got low-income housing, they got medical. Oh, I'm sorry, I meant Clinton. I'm sorry. So what happened, eventually some slaves escaped and got north and told the Northerners, they're killing us and we're dying. And the Northerners are free, wealthy, independent Northerners set up safe houses for the slaves to go back and go back to their own plantation and free their friends and relatives. Today, we have a legacy. You know, the Republican Party was started for the express purpose of ending slavery. The Democratic Party was the party of the slave master. And today we have switched that in 1960s to where now we're supporting the party of the slave master, the party that will manage us, the party that will give you programs instead of freedom. They give you a better hole to direct the cotton in and better bag to put the cotton in, but never your own plantation. So now we're fighting for minimum wage instead of maximum wage. Now we're fighting for benefits and programs instead of justice. So the 1800s saw a flood of free-thinking black folks out of slavery. They came into business, went into schools, had their own society with their own culture based on perseverance and freedom. Today we have a culture based on what will you give me to stay where I am. And so we owe a lot to the legacy of the past. I'm afraid we're turning our back on it.
What was the practical effect, in your opinion, of Lyndon Baines Johnson's Great Society programs of the 1960s?
It put you guys on the plantation. It put a tax on success. It put a burden on freedom. It destroyed the family. It reinvented the plantation, but it put white folks on it also. It destroyed the male's role in society. It allows the government to become the new husband. It allows the children to be raised by socialism, and it gave the inherited right of humans to want to take care of themselves a chance to die. Because now you have a society where we look for every problem we have, we look to the government to have the solution instead of within ourselves. Every problem we have requires you to do something. Every problem we have now in America is caused by someone else. And every problem we have in America now must be associated by a gang, I call it a gang, or some people call it a group mentality. So in order for me to be whole, we got to come together and go and conquer someone else. Instead of, before the Great Society, even the poor people had the notion of marriage. Even the poor people had the notion of education. Even the poor folks knew that gay activity was wrong and crime was wrong. Today, everyone is saying it's not my fault and I'm justified in doing things I want to do. We came out of society, out of the generation of the 60s, where if it feels good, do it. And now we're learning that if it feels good, it's probably wrong.
But in what way, what particular policy undermined the black family?
Well, Johnson's idea of welfare and care made it illegal, if not impractical, for the black family to stay together.
How?
He took the man out. He allowed the man, not just take him out, he made it illegal for the man to be in the home and you get welfare. And then when he got that woman with those children, he taxed the man, called it child support. He taxed the man to be involved in those kids' lives, to force them completely out of society, like they did on the plantation. That was the master's job of the plantation, to make sure that man wasn't involved in the care of his children. You can have babies, but the master took care of the babies. In welfare, you can have babies, but a master took care of that babies. He decided what food you ate, what schools you went to, how much play you had. He decided every element of your life, including ambition, so that the black kids were not accustomed to thinking of themselves as capable. They were accustomed to thinking of themselves as a dependent upon the state. So that those kids went from generations, sometimes 3 or 4 generations, on welfare, thinking it's their benefit, thinking it's their right. They will say, "Where is my check?"
So let me see if I follow this. I'm a little slow. So the African American, the black man, first of all, she gets government assistance, so he's not necessary. And then if he stays around, he'll get have to pay child support.
Absolutely.
So he ran away.
As a matter of fact, if that woman marries, that woman becomes successful, goes into business, she has to pay back that welfare. If she goes to school, she loses benefits. If the man moves into the home and tries to take care of his kids or someone else's kids, she gets penalized. Every step towards independence, she's penalized for.
Okay, so if Mason Weaver were president in 1965, what would the policy have looked like? How would you have encouraged the black family to stay together and still kept people from starving?
Well, people weren't starving in the 60s. The idea that black folks were impoverished, yes, but starving, no. We had black businesses, we had black societies, black universities. We were able to educate ourselves, and what we had to do was simply reward those people already leading for success. Instead, we shut them down. We shut down the black doctors and the black hospitals. I was born in Phillips Eugene Hospital in St. Louis, Missouri, 1950. Dr. Phillips was a black doctor who recognized that black folks in St. Louis did not have any medical treatment. So he started a hospital where my mother was able to go to. You have to give birth in clinics or at home in the black community in St. Louis. My mother was able to go to a hospital because of a black doctor in a black hospital. They shut that down in the 60s. It is gone. It's a clinic now. So we had society that was feeding us and providing and educating us and providing for us, and the Great Society took that and stomped it out. So now you have gangs instead.
So, but what would an alternative policy have been if a president in your administration?
I wouldn't have a policy. You see, every problem facing black community does not require a government solution. The problem was racist laws against black folks doing things. Once you remove those laws, those barriers, the civil rights movement, then black folks don't have to have any help to compete. You notice that we didn't have to have any help in the NBA and NFL and singing and dancing. Gee, guess what? We can box.
The white guys need help in the NBA.
Now because you allowed us to compete without shooting us and lynching us. So I'm saying to you, if I think I can play basketball and dominate it, if I think I can play football and dominate it, then guess what? If I think I can own a business, I will dominate that also. So you don't have to have a government program to help me. I am not handicapped.
So you would have no government assistance for families?
Well, I tell you what, I'll have the same government assistance for white folks. Same one you got for you.
So what would that be? How
none.
Would you?
It'd be none. There's no government program.
No government assistance.
Not for black people. For poor folks, maybe.
Okay. So how does that look in a way that doesn't break up a family? That's what I'm asking.
You have to. I think that what you do is reward those social institutions already providing that assistance. Churches, charity programs. You allow them to do what they do best. If once the government does anything, they have to do it by control.
So, for instance, would you reward, you'd say you'd get some assistance if your family stays together, for instance. Is that the idea?
Well,
Mom and dad stay together, you get a certain...
You can't force somebody not having a divorce. That's why I don't like government assistance in the first place. It was already, what worked in the 60s and 50s and 40s were social programs by individual organizations. Never, you cannot name one government social program that has ever worked in our life.
So the government gives the monies to the churches, and the churches then?
The government doesn't take the money in the first place. You don't have to give money to the church if you kept the money in the community. Don't take the money. It works best when you and I work together in our neighborhoods. Whenever you have a government program, you will always, always, 100% have failure.
Let me ask you about civil rights laws. Were those a good idea?
Civil rights laws were, that is, laws that saying that you cannot lynch me. But
How about that you can't kick me out of your diner?
Well, as long as I can have my own diner, I don't care.
So
Of course not, I don't care. I mean, the sit down in Greensboro, North Carolina, wasn't about black folks trying to get a sandwich. It wasn't for me trying to make sure you like me or serve me. It was that I could not open up a restaurant next door to you. But if I could have my black-only restaurant, why would I care if you had a white-only restaurant? What would happen, buddy, is that if you had a white-only restaurant, I would open up one next door for everybody and put you out of business. That's how America is. Mm-hmm. But I don't need Uncle Sam to make sure you and I don't fight and argue, because that means that I'm giving my power base back to someone else again. So if you have a government program that made it illegal for me to hit you and call you a racial name and call that a hate crime, that makes us both on the plantation. I want to be able to hate you freely. I don't want you to try to make sure I'm nice and cool. I'm not nice. I'm a competitor.
Okay, we'll be back in just a moment. Stay tuned. Back with our special guest, Mason Weaver, the author of Diamond in the Rough, which I'm guessing is you, the Diamond in the Rough. Is that correct?
No, you are. All of us are.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
See, we're all a diamond in the rough, or we're a lump of coal. It depends on how we handle the pressure. You see, the diamond went through the pressure for a short period of time and came out a glowing gem. But if you let the pressure handle you, you become a lump of coal. The pressure of life is always temporary. Poverty is always temporary. That's why I don't understand minimum wage increases. Poverty is temporary. No one stays in for 50 years. They move on. Usually kids out of college, they move on. We don't have to have any programs to help eliminate poverty. We need to back off of that and let folks learn from mistakes. A baby learns to walk when it gets tired of falling. You can't make a baby walk. So pressures of life, whether it's marriage or owning a business or dealing with life, the pressures of life will make you strong. What made you who you are today are the things you went through, not the things you avoided. So the diamond in the rough is simply trying to explain to people where success is. It lies on the other side of those problems.
Now, you obviously have said many times you don't want to dwell in your victimhood, but what did it feel
I don't have
like?
victimhood.
Well, you don't have victimhood, but man-to-man honesty, what
Yes.
does it feel like to be hated by a white man? You mentioned the incident you went through, but growing up where you grew up, you must have had incidents. What is that like, and how do you get beyond that?
What's it like have somebody not like you? What's it like for
The
you?
same as you're saying it's the same as any other situation.
It really is the same.
But when you're hated for the color of your skin, who you are, isn't that different than being hated for other reasons?
Everything is different, sure. But what a problem is,
Like if you hate me for my suit,
Yeah.
I can change into another outfit.
but see, why would you change to make me stop hating you? That's my problem.
But I'm
see.
just saying,
Yeah.
you're hated for the core of who you are.
But that still doesn't matter. See, why would your opinion of me mean more to me than my opinion of me? I know that I'm intelligent. I know that I'm competitive. And no matter what it is, you're not going to like me because of that. I want the same job you want. So you're going to try whatever avenue you can to make me feel bad about myself by calling me a name, whatever it is. It's because you want the job. I know you want the job, but you're not getting the job. You know, I had a neighbor once who flew the Confederate flag, and he and I did not get along on anything. And he flew the Confederate flag for my benefit. I'm in an all-white neighborhood. I know why he flew the flag. So I ignored it, and I ignored it. And one day he said to me, Mason, does my flag bother you? I said, why would it bother me? It's your flag. He said, well, you know, you people think. I said, what do you mean? You mean intelligent, handsome black man? What do you mean, you people? He said, what does the flag mean to you? What does it symbolize to you, Mason? I said, your flag symbolizes the flag of the losers. You're lost. Black men and white men got together and tore down the society. We won, you lost. So every time I see your flag, I think of victory. Fly your flag. We won.
Well, now, what do you think your life would have been like? Were you around? If you were around at the time of the Civil War,
Civil War.
Yeah, you weren't around. But what would you have been doing? What do you think you would have been doing? What would your opinion have been of things going on at the time?
I would have been a soldier in the Union Army, marching to Richmond, kicking doors in. I would have been a conductor on the Underground Railroad. I would have been trying to resist, burn down the fields and destroy master's crop. I've been learning to read and write illegally by dark because I knew that reading and writing was freedom. I would have been preaching the gospel of independence and freedom like I'm doing today, or I've been lynched, one of the two.
Now today, what is your life like? You obviously are traveling quite a bit, speaking, writing books. What's your day-to-day like? Because
of my disabilities, I can't work, thanks to that racist white guy who tried to kill me. So I decided to use my brain instead. I've written 4 books. I lecture worldwide. I'm an ex-talk show host. I ran for office in San Diego. I have a beautiful woman who loves me. I do not know why. I guess I'm a good salesman, I guess. I don't know. And I have something to live for her. And I'm going to conquer the world for my wife, the world's most beautiful woman. I believe her legacy. I believe her inheritance. And for my grandkids to be able to know who I am and to be able to stand on their own 2 feet and not depend on anybody for anything else other than the intelligence that I left them. It's a legacy that every man has in their heart to leave something for their family, not for the community, but for your family. And what a family is, what a community is in reality, is a man and a woman having certain principles about those kids and live around other folks like that, the same principles. That is called a neighborhood, and a group of neighborhoods are called a community. We have an American community here. We believe in certain things as Americans. It doesn't matter what color you are, or what race you are, or what gender you are, or what age you are. As Americans, we have a certain key set of goals and beliefs. That's who I am. I'm not a black American, I'm not an African American, I'm an American. And on our census in 2000, you couldn't have a block there was no block for American on a census bureau. And I didn't fill mine out because I'm an American. And my ancestors fought in every war this country's ever had. And we have sacrificed more than most of this country's history. And the biggest veteran group, minority group in this country are black folks. I am an American citizen. I don't need special help, special care, or special attention. I need for my government and my society to back off of me and to recognize that I'm a contributing member of the society, and I don't have special needs. What I am is an American.
Now, you ran as a Republican.
Yes.
How did that
the Party of Lincoln.
The Party of Lincoln. How did that race go? And you know, is this ever going to change this current dynamic of Democrats voting about 92% Democratic? How is this ever going to change from your perspective? You obviously want it to change. Yes. How is that ever going to happen?
Well, don't forget now, it's not very old. It's only been since 1969 that black folks voted.
I think it'd be since FDR, since the New Deal, probably.
Well, no, the black vote, Nixon was endorsed by King until Martin Luther, I'm talking about King, Daddy King, Father King, until Dr. King was arrested in Georgia.
You mean Martin Luther King's father?
Yes,
was a Nixon
Kennedy.
Supporter?
Yes, and it wasn't until Dr. King was arrested in Georgia that Kennedy came out supporting him, and Nixon was quiet. And Daddy King said, if he's willing to help my granddaughter, my daughter-in-law, I want to help him.
So that was a turning point.
That was a turning point because he's 1 million black votes changed votes, and Nixon won lost by 100,000 votes.
But don't you think African Americans loved FDR?
Well, I'm sure everybody liked FDR. The lies he was telling about the Great Society. I mean, about changing the New Deal. But in general, though, black folks were the first black elected officials was 1875. 5 years after the Civil War, they were Republicans. The first black Democrat was 1934. So black folks were always voting Republican until the 60s. So what's going to have to happen is another dynamic change. And so it took one election cycle for black folks to start changing their votes back to the slave master, and it would take another dynamic change like that.
And what will that be?
Well, I don't know. I think it's going to be economics. I think that once black folks start voting their pocketbook in the voting booth, this election cycle right now You have all the Democratic candidates for president promising you they're going to raise your taxes. They're promising you, if you elect me, I promise I'm going to take more money from you. And black folks are now solidly middle class. And then look at their wallets and their kids' education and their retirement. And they're saying, I don't want to take my money anymore. And that's why you find Hillary in trouble. That's why you find she will, in every poll, she never gets more than 49% of the votes, usually 45% of the vote. She's in trouble because of that. People are aware of their pocketbook. Now, in my race, I ran for a state assembly in North San Diego County, including Rancho Santa Fe, the richest city in the country. And it was a 2% black, actually 1.2% black in that district. I ran against 11 other Republicans, including 4 mayors. I beat all mayors. And the guy who beat me spent $500,000 of his own money. I also outraised everybody in the race. I came in 4th out of 12, and I think I did very well. I had 500 endorsements worldwide, nationwide. I did pretty good.
So is this the first itch for politics? Are you going to keep doing this?
Yeah, it was my first attempt in politics. I'm not sure if I'll do it again. I only ran because there were no conservatives running at the time. And I ran to make sure the field got conservative, and they did. The guy who beat me was a conservative. And I would run again, just like I served in Vietnam. I would run if I need to be served. If I need to serve the country, I run. I'm not aching to get in politics. I'd rather be on the outside throwing rocks and bricks. And I can't speak as openly in politics because you can't raise money if you're aggressive and conservative. So I'd rather be out here just kind of pick at the heels of the lewd left.
Who are the leaders that you admire today in the black community or outside of the black community?
Well, I don't know what a black leader is. I don't know of any white leaders either. I don't know what that is. I have some social leaders, my daddy, my father. I have political leaders that I like. I love Clarence Thomas. I do like some of the guys running for president, like Duncan Hunter out of San Diego. I love him. I have economical leaders. So each category, I find people who espouse my beliefs, and I follow them. But I certainly don't follow anybody based on the color of their skin. I don't do that.
Okay, we'll be back in just a moment with our guest, Mason Weaver. Stay tuned. Mason Weaver, the author of Diamond in the Rough. And Mason, talk a bit about the book. We've talked on some general themes, but what is the book and your other books, and you have a forthcoming book as well, but what is the general theme that runs through all of your work?
Success is natural. If you watch a baby walking, that baby will stand up against that table and let go and fall down because its mind is on falling, not walking. It thinks I'm gonna fall, it thinks I'm gonna fall. As soon as it lets go, he falls down. The baby will fall down until it gets tired of falling, and then will stand up and take that first step. And the baby will learn eventually that all walking is controlled falling. You fall forward. I don't care if you're a single woman, if you're a black man in prison, if your mother abused you, if your mother cracked heads or she was a crackhead. I don't care where you are in life. Success in anything you're doing is going through the difficult times you have in front of you. Not avoid them, but embrace them. So as a black man, 21 years old, high school dropout, disabled, unable, I had to lay in a hospital bed in Balboa Hospital. I couldn't breathe on my own. I couldn't speak on my own. I couldn't move on my own. I was completely, totally helpless. My first goal in life was to get my big toe to move. My second goal was to get down the hallway one day and get a drink of water on my own without begging somebody to wet my tongue for me. I couldn't swallow. And from that hospital bed in August of 1971 to August of 1975, not only did I get out of that bed, and I got 3 college degrees in that period of time. Because each step, each problem requires you as a human being to overcome it and not let somebody carry you and feed you and burp you and change you. That's the only lifestyle I had for myself. I discovered that success in everything depends on the same thing. Everything in life, everything you have done in life depends on you becoming that diamond that you really are. But you must first believe in your own ability to make that step. The baby controls falling. If you control your falling in life, you will never fail in life.
What has been your biggest failure in life?
My biggest failure in life has been, I think, my inability to bring that message to everyone else. I found that I get frustrated, I get too aggressive, I'm too contentious sometimes, and people tend to turn off for what I'm saying.
You contentious?
No, not me, no. But people don't, because I have a passion for what I'm talking about. I know that this works. I am a living example. They said I would not walk again. They said I would die in 9 months. The fact is that the human spirit is so strong, it is basically unstoppable until it stops breathing. So my biggest failure, I think, in life is my failure to be able to convince more people to follow me. I feel like Harriet Tubman, who said, someone asked her how many slaves did she free. She said, I freed thousands, but I would have freed thousands more had they just known they were slaves.
What about, we're jumping back here in history, what was the significance of Uncle Tom's Cabin, do you think?
Uncle Tom, don't forget now, Uncle Tom was the most Christian guy in that book. Uncle Tom was the wisest guy in that book. Uncle Tom was the person we all should try to be. He took care of his business, he took care of his family. Now Uncle Tom's Cabin is turned into this negative concept. So when black folks are called Uncle Tom, it's negative. But the real Uncle Tom today is the guy telling you cannot get off the plantation. The guy telling you must have a government program. The guy telling you deserve something from them and don't do anything until they give it to you. That's the real Uncle Tom. The sellout was the guy on the plantation selling out your plans to escape. Sell out the master, you plan on leaving where he is. I'm telling folks to get off the plantation. So the person telling you to stay there is the real sellout.
President Lincoln, when he met Harriet Beecher Stowe, the author, said, this is the little lady who started this great war. Do you think there was a connection between the two?
Absolutely.
What did it do? How did it do that?
Well, what Uncle Tom's Cabin did was tell the North what was going on in the South. Because before that, the North was getting their news from the slave master. It's like you being a World War II veteran out in the Pacific Ocean someplace fighting the Japanese and getting all your news from Tokyo Rose. All of a sudden, the GIs came back with the real truth. And so Uncle Tom's Cabin told the Northerners, those were the conscious, that something's going on wrong in this country. And a Christian movement began with the Wesleyan Church and the Quaker Church. The Christian movement began to lead people out of slavery, out of captivity, and that flood changed the consciousness of the North. And in one generation, in one election cycle, in 1859, the Republican Party came out of a Christian movement, and they stood up in America who was split by minorities, basically, tired of compromising. They stood up and said, if you elect us, we will end this scourge of slavery. We will end it if you elect us. And the nation gave them all three powers of government and a majority of governorships. And in one election cycle, we took the nation to war. And by the next election cycle, freedom came. That one book.
Do you ever have a sense, sometimes when I see black conservatives in the media, there's a certain sense that they're not legitimate, like they're odd, they're strange. Armstrong Williams, there's a book about Clarence Thomas called Strange Justice, which I think makes that sort of oddball image. Does that, I mean, that's got to annoy you to be told that your views are not really valid in accordance with your race?
Why
No?
would, it's like a Muslim telling me my views aren't valid as a Christian. Why would your opinion of me mean more to me than my opinion of me? I don't really care.
We all care about what people think
No,
about us, don't we?
not in war. This is a social war I'm going on now. I went to Vietnam, buddy. I didn't care what the Viet Cong thought about me.
But why do you think it is? Why is it that Clarence Thomas or Tom Sowell, they're viewed by many as odd, as if they shouldn't have those views?
Because they're not following, don't forget now, the black community, and I say this because I don't believe there's a black community, but the black community is led by emotions. So master leads you out of fear, out of emotions. Clarence Thomas is saying there is no wolf. He's saying the emperor has no clothes. He is saying, I have done it, you can do it. And so he is going against the image that master wants that black man to think about themselves. So when I stand up and say, I have done it, I've come back to lead you to freedom. Master's saying that freedom is bad. I'm telling you I know the way, and I will lead you. Well, master and his little peons cannot support that idea because you leave the plantation. If you leave, guess what? Jackson and Farrakhan and Sharpton will not get paid anymore. So and then CBS News and ABC News will not have a story to tell. The only reason you know the name Jackson and the name Farrakhan and the name Sharpton, the only reason you know that name is that NBC and ABC want you to know it. Because if they really want to know what black folks think, they go to the Church of God in Christ with 6 million conservative black folks in it. but you never heard of that bishop. He just died, Bishop Peterson. You never heard of him because he's too conservative, too understanding, too pro-education. So the black community has been captured by, I call it the lewd left, and there's a lot of money in poverty, so they can continue to feed this idea. They show you Farrakhan because he makes me angry and makes you afraid. That's the purpose of all these folks doing these things.
What do you think Martin Luther King would think here, sitting next to you? What would he think of you and your message today? Were he alive?
I've talked to his family. I've talked to Bernice King and Alveda King, both conservative, black conservative people in the South. They believe that Daddy King, Dr. King, would have been a evangelical, spirit-filled preacher when he died. He'd be preaching Jesus Christ, and that's what I preach. So I think that he and I will be in the same pulpit, speaking the same language. If you're free in Christ, you're free indeed. So why are you depending on somebody to take care of you in the future?
And you think he would be against many of the programs, affirmative action type programs that we have today?
Well, he fought for equal rights, so why would he want government-sponsored racism? He fought for equal rights, not special rights. So he marched and demonstrated for the right for men to work, not for the right for folks to get better welfare. I believe that he would have been right alongside of me fighting for the same things he died for.
Well, then why were so many of his contemporaries who are alive today
A lot of money in poverty. A lot of money in poverty. I mean, don't forget now, Jackson's job is to deliver black votes for the Democrats. That's his job. And he does his job well. But black folks are not following Jackson. White folks are following Jackson.
Ralph Abernathy, John Lewis, there are many others who were alive
And
at the
many are
time.
not. You got a lot of the black leaders from the civil rights movement are very conservative now. But once again, you will not see them on CNN and ABC. But they're out there.
What's your advice to a young man, whether black or white? Is it the same? Is it different?
Yes. You have a chance to look back on history now. You've been in a country with a long enough history to look back. Everything, any man, Jew, Hindu, Italian, everything you think in your heart you can do, there's not a power on the planet strong enough to stop you from doing it but yourself. There are no obstacles. There are no fences. There are no barriers except in your mind. Take control of your body and your life, and it'll control yourself. Change your lifestyle and change your life.
What's next for Mason Weaver?
Well, a new book is coming out, Polishing the Diamond in the Rough. I'm going on the lecture circuit this year, and we're going to speak about the future of freedom to America.
Mason, thanks for joining me today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. And thank you for joining us. Come back next time for another edition of the Bully Pulpit Show. We'll see you then.